And welcome back to some of the Cooler Jets podcast. Real Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, Jets 3-3 coming out of the bye. A big one this weekend against the crosstown rivals, the New York Giants. And so we thought, why not bring on a guest? We've been meaning to bring on some guests for these preview pods, and we've been slackers. But we have Rivka Boord, who's a fellow writer at JetsXFactor.com, but she also writes for Big Blue View to give us the Giants perspective, also part of the Jets X Factor Fantasy League. And so I can thank you for cutting DeAndre Swift after week one, because that's honestly saved my 3-4 team at the moment. But Rivka, how are you doing?
I'm good. Did a Giants preview pod earlier today, so now I'm on with the Jets side. And if you wanted to know where my allegiance lies, it's definitely on this side. So, I'm looking forward to talking about this and talking about why the Jets are going to win.
Well, I was reading your preview article for Big Blue View, so getting the Giants fan perspective. And I was saying to Michael, I was like, if I was a Giants fan reading this, I'd be like, all right, we have a good shot. The Jets have Max Mitchell at right tackle, and we have Kayvon Thibodeau going up against him. McGovern's been pretty bad this year. He's giving up a high pressure rate. We got Dexter Lawrence against it. Like, I was reading your whole breakdown, and I was like, damn, the Jets are, this is going to be a tough game for them. And then I zoomed back out, and I'm like, you know what? Jets 3-3 coming off of beating the Eagles. The Giants have been a bit of a mess this year, but the last 2 weeks they've been a lot better. I guess let's start with the Jets offense and Zach Wilson, because I think that's what all eyes are on. Is teams 3-3, game and a half out of first place in the AFC East. They have a chance here, but it's all going to come down to the quarterback, and he's facing a defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale, who's going to throw the kitchen sink at him. I mean, he's going to be showing blitz or blitzing on pretty much every single play, and it's how is Zach Wilson going to respond to that? So I guess we'll just start with Zach. What are you kind of expecting the Giants to throw at him? And then how do you feel Zach is in year three in handling some of those zero blitz and looks that Wink Martindale is going to throw at him?
So first of all, you should just know that Wink Martindale blitzed Brock Purdy 85% of the time.
Nice.
He wasn't nearly as high against some of the other quarterbacks, and he barely blitzed actually Josh Allen and Tua. But I'm saying, and he's had varying levels against other teams, but I would fully expect him to blitz Zach Wilson on almost every play, because he's not there. Again, the same way that every other defense is like, okay, we're going to play press coverage. We're gonna load the box, and we're gonna dare you to throw the ball, and you're gonna have to get us out of that look. The thing is with the Giants is that from what I saw last year in particular, when you try that kind of thing, you better be able to get your run fit against Breece Hall, because you over pursue and he's gone. And that's one thing the Giants did a lot last year and early in this season. They've been better against the run too in recent weeks, but. Again, if you're going to blitz that much and you have a running back like that, he breaks one tackle, he's gone.
Yeah, Michael, you were kind of talking to me about this too. The last few weeks we've been pounding the table to throw early, and that'll open up Breece late. But then we were just talking now, you're thinking maybe flip it on its head for this week? Also, yeah, hi. I never really introduced you in the pod. We just went straight to Rivka. I hope you're well. Nice little bye break.
I'm glad to be on this podcast. It's always been a dream of mine, so happy to be here.
After you were slandering it on Twitter this weekend. Well, there were quite a few people who did not understand the inside joke that was going on there.
That was hilarious. Like, I was saying, this is the worst podcast I've ever heard. Even though in my bio it says that I'm on the podcast.
I like that I had people stand up for me, even though it's like they definitely don't listen, because if they did, they would know that you're on it. But whatever.
One guy was like, "This is very rude." I don't understand the joke.
It was all because I said I was having a tough.
People say because they don't really have reading comprehension skills.
It was all. But... he's going after. Okay, it was all just because I said. That I was having a tough time cheering for the Patriots. That was all I said. I was just
I said the same thing to my family last week. I said, I think I texted Michael that too. And he's like, no, I'm not having any trouble.
Yeah.
That is what I said. I don't know. I didn't. I was like, I know what's best for the Jets. And like, if the Patriots winning, it's the Patriots winning. The Bills winning is hard to watch too. So
it was better. And it knocked now it's like the Jets aren't the only team the Patriots have beaten. Patriots are another game back in the race for a top quarterback in the draft. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It was just weird, getting hyped. And then the camera cuts to the Pats fans in the stands getting hyped. I'm like, oh, I hate these guys. I like seeing Boston.
I do feel that though. Like there were some moments where I was like, yes, let's go. And I was like, wait, I just cheered for Mac Jones to complete the pass. I hate this guy.
I'm like cheering. Gesicki's doing the gritty and I'm getting hyped. And I'm like, what the hell is happening to me? All right, anyways, back to flipping the game script on its head. Do you think it's
back to the Giants? Yeah, that's what I think, because I was doing some research and seeing like what led to the Giants being so poor defensively over those first 5 games versus why did they start playing better the last 2 games? And one of the things I noticed is that their run defense in the first half of games has been very poor throughout the season, but especially on first down, they've struggled even more in the first half. They're giving up over 7 yards per carry on first down runs. So if you come out of the gates running the football, especially on first down against the Giants, I think you could really set the tone and take control of the game. And over the last 2 weeks, part of the reason they play a little bit better is because the Bills and Commanders didn't really maximize that as much. Over the first 5 games, they were facing about 14 first half runs a game, but last 2 weeks it was only about 8. So the Bills and the Commanders they went away from what was working against the Giants, which was pounding the ball on the ground in the first half, taking control, long, efficient drives, let your defense rest, and you got to rest the defense against this Giants offense that has really struggled. That's kind of been the formula that worked those first 5 games. Last 2 games, I felt like the Bills and Commanders went away from that because the Giants' pass defense does have some good aspects to it. It's the run defense that really sunk them in the beginning. So I think it's a Breece Hall type of game. And this is a great timing to do it because, Breece Hall, you're coming off the bye week. 2 games before that, his snap count went up in back-to-back games. So he's been ramping up. He's rested now. I think he's more than ready to take on a workhorse role. And in addition to that, last week against the Eagles, the Jets finally did what I was asking them to do for weeks and weeks. And a lot of us were passing the ball a lot on first down. They did it 70% of the time against the Eagles. So you put that on film. The Giants are going to be prepared for that, for you to come out pass heavy, expecting them to load the box, especially against this Giants defense that's very aggressive. They're going to be expecting, I feel like, a pass heavy approach on first down because of what the Jets showed last game. So I think you could work off of that and use Breece Hall early, get some 5 to 6 yard chunks on first down pretty consistently, and then you put yourself second, third, and medium, and you got some opportunities to take some play action shots. So I really think this is a Breece Hall ground and pound sort of game, and you want to work off of that versus what they did against the Eagles and what we want them to do, which was pass first, run off of that. I think this is the game you flip it.
Mm-hmm. Rivka, I'll go to you first on this. Obviously, bye week was last week, first 6 games. It's been a whirlwind of a season. The Jets have had to kind of adjust their offense on the fly. There's been a couple of things that Michael and I have been talking about, like he was mentioning, that we wanted them to do. Is there, now that you had a chance to kind of look at the first 6 games as a whole, the Jets enter their post-bye stretch on offense, is there anything in particular you're getting frustrated? You want to see them do more? Like I'll give you an example. For me, it's like, I'd love to see Breece Hall utilized as a receiver, flexed outside a lot more. And he hasn't really had an opportunity to do that. But, in my eyes, it's like, and you were talking about this in your preview article, it's like if you're an opposing team, Garrett Wilson is really the only receiver you have to worry about. I mean, Allen Lazard is great. I actually am a big Lazard fan. He does a lot of the dirty work, but he's not really a guy who's beating man coverage. Conklin actually is a pretty solid tight end, and you can get the ball to him. But Breece Hall is, in my opinion, already one of the better backs in football, and he has that receiving threat that we haven't really seen fully utilized in his career that it was at Iowa State. And so in my opinion, it's like you have Garrett Wilson, that's your best receiver. Breece Hall, that's your second best player on offense. And you got to find ways to get the ball to him, especially you don't have Tippmann, you don't have AVT. Get the ball to him in space as a receiver. So when I'm watching, that's what I'm hoping to see, that we can see the ball thrown to Breece. Is there anything else from the offensive side of the ball you're getting frustrated with Hackett that you'd like to see them implement?
So, you're mentioning about Breece. Michael had written an article in the offseason about how Hackett was a good coordinator to take advantage of that and to utilize Breece more, because we saw him in a limited sample size last year run some nice routes and really kind of like how Conklin, gets by linebackers with his rocker step and whatever. Like we saw him, really, make good moves and get around, and get open. And, they haven't really done it this year. There was one play against the Eagles that Michael pointed out where they had Breece lined up over a linebacker to the left, and he got open, but Zach was looking the other way, so he didn't see it. And Michael said he didn't blame Zach for it because he wasn't looking that way. But I said, if you have Breece one-on-one a linebacker, that should be your first read every time. Most quarterbacks, when they have a running back split out wide and a linebacker is covering them, that's where they look first. I remember Rodgers doing it all the time. They would line up Quincy Williams over Aaron Jones and just throw it straight up. Now, it happens to be, Jones didn't get 2 feet down, as we're talking about last year. I know that with the Giants, when Saquon Barkley, even in training camp, they would split him out and the linebacker came to cover him, that's where the ball's going. I'm not saying to throw it there, but at least look there. And so I would want to see them, incorporate that more, but also, look, just this is from a Zach angle, look at your most advantageous spot. I was actually just today, I was watching some of Joe's, film reviews because I had missed a couple of them. I was watching the Eagles one, but then I went back and I was watching the Denver one also. And one thing he was pointing out, I think he pointed this out from the Eagles game. He said, there was one play. Why are you looking at Cobb first? Why is he your first read? Cobb should never be your first read. And so that kind of thing, I don't know if that's a Hackett thing. I don't know if that's a reading coverage thing, but it does feel like a lot of times, he's not looking to the right place. There was another play Joe pointed out where it was a 4-on-4 where it should have been thrown as a screen to Cook. Then the linebacker blitzed. So it would have been, he would have had numbers out in front of him. And then Zach tried to throw a speed out to Hardman. When he had the screen set up very well.
One of the few targets to Hardman.
Yeah, and it was a stupid throw. It was a bad route. But the thing is, it's just okay, so why is this happening? Is this just Zach, or is he being told, no, this is where you're looking? I was actually reading a video. I was watching a video the other day from Alex Rollins, who I watch on YouTube, and he does a lot of film breakdown. And he was talking. The title of the video was that Sean Payton is neutering Russell Wilson, and one of the things he said is literally that there were plays where he would dial it up, and then he would tell Wilson, "No, you have to throw the ball here." You could see it from the way the play was designed. And it was part of a larger video, but that's sometimes what I wonder is if that's what they're telling Zach is you have to read it like this. And maybe it's just that Zach can't do it on his own and which is a problem, but they're kind of stuck with it. But it just feels like so often, what are you doing? Why is that? Why are you looking there? Yes, sometimes it's easy to watch it frame by frame. And Michael pointed out sometimes where I did this, where I said, oh, this was open. And he was like, well, it really only got open once he released the ball or things like this. But there were still plenty of times where I think I pointed it out in an earlier article also from a couple of weeks ago saying that Zach would just never be playable because he's always looking to the wrong place. And that's why he misses open receivers.
Yeah, I remember having that feeling after watching the Patriots game where it's it was frustrating the amount of times where it was he was looking at you'd think pre-snap he has the numbers advantage on one side and then he's looking at the complete other side of the field. And I've described him like this on the pod before, but to me, Zach Wilson right now is a 2-read quarterback, which isn't the worst thing in the world with this defense, but it's pretty much some variation of Wilson and then either Lazard or Conklin or whoever's is the second receiver on his progression. And then it's either check down or scramble. It's 1-2, check down or scramble, pretty much every play. There are a few examples. Obviously that big play he had to Conklin against Denver at the end of that game where he was, scanning cross field and throwing to Conklin. And I think he was his third read on that play. But for the most part, what the Jets are asking Zach Wilson to do is pretty simple. He's beyond a 1-read quarterback, but he's a 2-read quarterback, then get to the check down and scramble. From the Giants' perspective, and you can honestly lay out a lot of the stuff that you wrote in that article. If you're Wink Martindale, you look at a quarterback like Zach Wilson and you think, hey, we can make this guy see ghosts with our pressure looks. We can confuse this guy. We can show him a lot of guys at the line and then drop him out back into coverage, take away some of the checkdowns and make him beat us from the pocket. So from the Giants' perspective on defense, what do you expect them to do to attack Zach Wilson and the rest of this Jets offense?
You said the kitchen sink, and that's pretty much what Wink does, meaning it's not just that he blitzes, it's how he blitzes. He does all sorts of, every blitz that you can possibly think of, he'll come up with. And then the thing is that there's going to be man coverage behind it more often than not. He likes to play, aggressive man.
Which Zach did well against KC.
Again, and if you have the right call for it, it shouldn't be such an issue. For example, if they're blitzing, run screens behind it. If you know that they're going to blitz, the thing is that very often when they show cover zero, they usually are running cover zero. It's funny. It's one thing I noticed, Jason Pinnock, right? Jets cut him. A lot of Jets fans were not happy, signed with the Giants. He's playing actually as the starting free safety for the most part. Obviously, you rotate, but very often he's the single high safety. And one thing I noticed, though, is when I noticed this from last year, I didn't even necessarily follow up with it, but I noticed this last year, whenever he was near the line of scrimmage or in the box, he almost always blitzed. if they put him deep, okay, he was deep. But when he was anywhere near the box or mug, in one of the gaps, he was always coming. The thing is, the offense knew it, so they would just throw behind it. You replace the blitz, and you saw it over and over again. I wrote an article about Pinnock, and that's why I noticed it. I was like, wow, this is actually crazy how often. So if you look at the way they run their blitzes and say, I would definitely expect those blitzes coming all over the place. Wink likes to blitz 6 or 7. I mean, I think he blitzed Purdy with 6 or more guys a third of the time. Meaning not just a one-man blitz, but, not just, if you're going to call a blitz like 5 pass rushers, he sent like 6 or 7. And so, I would expect something like that because the perception is that Zach can't play against the blitz. I think he's done a bit of I'm not saying he's doing a great job against it, but I think he's done a serviceable job against it. He's not like this guy he's not automatically going to have a complete meltdown because someone's blitzing him.
Right.
The other thing I'll just point out, let's say, so the Giants last week really faced Sam Howell, right? They sacked him a bunch of times, pressured him all over the place. The thing is that, the Eagles also sacked Zach, 5 times and pressured him a bunch, but I wouldn't say Zach really looked rattled in that game. No. I wouldn't say so. So, I'm not saying for sure Zach can be rattled, but I'm not like overly concerned, even if he gets sacked at times, and it will happen and they'll punt. In a defensive game, in the grand scheme of things, as long as they can get a few drives going and actually, punch it in a couple of times, I'm not the blitz is not my primary concern in this game. From the Jets' perspective, my biggest concern, as I said before, is Dexter Lawrence coming up the middle, because I think Zach has when he has that pressure up the middle, that's when he starts his spins and his crazy going backward and all that stuff. And
Zach Wilson time, baby.
Yeah, and Lawrence, he got his first 2 sacks this season last week, but he's been a monster. He's still been,
right.
He's been a monster all year. And I think is a threat to really blow up the Jets' game plan. And I think the Giants are going to take advantage of it. Like I said, you send multiple blitzers in the A gaps, and with Lawrence over on the nose, you can't really use the guards to help on Lawrence, because they have to worry about the blitz.
Right. Yeah, that is really the only chance that I think the Giants have, is if they are able to get by this Jets offensive line, which has been up and down. But if they're sending heat and Zach Wilson is looking unsure of himself on where to go with the ball, that's really where in my opinion, though, it's kind of like, I would almost rather, always see those stats of like Zach Wilson when he throws under 2.5 seconds versus over 2.5 seconds. And look, I don't think he's been, like you said, it's not like he's been great against the blitz, but I would almost rather face a team that blitzes a lot and plays man coverage than a team that's dropping back in the zone, kind of like what the Jets are doing, and taking away everything deep and just trying to force Zach Wilson to beat their zone coverage from the pocket. I feel like Zach Wilson has a better chance to make some of those big plays and show off that arm talent, because the Giants are going to give him one-on-ones down the field. They're going to give him Allen Lazard one-on-one down the field. They're going to give him Xavier Gibson or whoever they want to take. So he's going to have some opportunities to play quarterback, assuming they let him play confidently. It's just, can he avoid the back-breaking mistakes? When Dexter Lawrence comes flying up the A-gap, it's a busted play. Is he going to be able to dirt the ball, or is he going to try to, like you said, spin around, cause a 20-yard sack or a fumble or throw a pick? That's really going to be the difference between winning and losing in this game, is the Zach Wilson turnovers. Michael, when you look at this Jets offense, we'll get to the defense in a second. Are there any matchups? Obviously Dexter Lawrence versus the interior of the Jets offensive line is probably the big one, but on the perimeter, obviously Garrett Wilson going up against this Giants secondary. Is there anybody on the offense that you're kind of looking as a prime matchup that the Jets can take advantage of?
Well, first, quickly, I want to bounce off something you just said. That I kind of agree that this is like a favorable matchup in terms of maybe not favorable, but a matchup that gives you an opportunity to be successful because of the Giants' blitzing tendencies, because they blitz to such a high degree to where the Jets are going to know it's coming, especially, with the way teams typically play Zach Wilson. Then you multiply that by the fact that the Giants just do that by default. I think you're going to get a lot of those similar opportunities like he had against Kansas City, like you mentioned, Ben, where if you can get those one-on-ones, Zach Wilson can make good throws if he's reading it correctly, if you have the right call, if he's ready to attack it. So I think they're going to have some good opportunities to do that. It's just, can Zach find those matchups quickly? Can Hackett dial up the right calls to get people open? And if they can, I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for him to make some big plays in this game. I pulled up the blitz rate numbers. So the highest blitz rate the Jets have faced in a game this year was the Patriots game. That was 42.5%. That's lower than the Giants' season average, which is 46%. So just if the Giants do their normal blitzing rate, it'll be more than anything they've seen this year. So it could be a disaster, but it could also lead to something great if Zach is ready for it. Like you said, Rivka, you just call some screens, throw behind it. You know what's going to be coming. I think this is a chance for both Zach and Hackett to really finally unleash the utmost potential of what they can do with this offense, because the opportunities are going to be there. Favorable opportunities will be available, and they just got to hit them the way that teams were the first few weeks. I mean, you look at, they were giving up a ton of deep bombs on outside the number of throws over the first few weeks. Tyreek Hill had a big touchdown. Debo had a big touchdown on a go route, which he very rarely does. So this could be a big Garrett Wilson game too. So speaking of matchups, I could go right into Garrett Wilson. I think this is a big Garrett Wilson game too. I really think it's the Breece and Garrett game. I think that's what this is. Last week,
I think every game is that.
It is, but I think, we haven't really seen that Garrett game yet where he really takes over a game. I mean, he had 12 targets last game. I think he had 14 against the Chiefs, but we haven't seen that one game where, it's the Garrett show and he's just dominating. I think this could be it, because the Giants have had a tough time against number one receivers this year. They've given up just under 100 yards per game to number one receivers. And they've been, like I said, really bad against outside the numbers throws to wide receivers, especially down the field. They've given up over 10 yards downfield. They've given up 13 catches for over 300 yards this year to wide receivers. So you're talking about 25 yards of completion twice a game. So basically, you can get 2 deep shots to Garrett Wilson in this game. That's the average of what the Giants are giving up. You should be able to get that. So it just goes back to what I was just saying earlier. Those opportunities to make plays will be there. The Giants give up a lot of big plays outside of wide receivers, or at least they were before the last 2 games, and the Commanders and Bills couldn't really hit it as efficiently. But that's going to be the key for the Jets, I think, is Garrett Wilson against this blitzing defense. He's going to see a lot of man coverage. Can he dominate those matchups and create opportunities for big plays down the field?
Yeah, and I would imagine, Rivka, I don't know if you have something you want to say, but I would imagine a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 13 personnel. They're going to run the ball early. They'll open up that play action game, but then, like you said, they can take advantage of. The Giants are going to send the blitz. Zach Wilson's got to get the ball out of his hands, but he's going to have some favorable matchups. If they do shade a safety over single high, if that's Pinnock to Garrett's side, it's like the Jets need somebody else to prove that they can beat man coverage. We have the Breece Hall. We have Tyler Conklin. We have maybe Xavier Gibson gets involved a little bit more. Somebody else might have to step up. Like you said, I know it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall show, but teams are going to scheme for that if you get too dependent on one weapon. Rivka, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add there, and then we can jump to the Jets defense versus the Giants offense.
So I was just going to say, if you can get the ball out quickly, you have some opportunities there, because again, the Giants earlier in the year, one of the things is their blitzes really weren't getting home. They really weren't, and that's one of the reasons that they were just being exploited so much, is because they weren't actually getting, forget about sacks, they weren't even getting pressure. And it started to pick up more recently. Their pressure specifically. Now, part of that could be, just the quality of offensive line faced. Depending on which team and which time. I'm saying Washington's offensive line is certainly nothing to write home about. And so it's not particularly surprising that that's the game where that they finally started getting sacks and pressure. But again, if you can get the ball, one of Sam Howell's problems is that he holds on to the ball too long. If Zach can just get the ball out of his hand, which has been a focus of his this season, he hasn't always been. I think his average time to throw is still like one of the longest in the league. I think it wasn't, and then maybe he had a longer average time over the last week or two. So but still, he's been working on it, trying to get it out of his hands more often. And I think also trying to scheme up that yak. Because it's besides, getting it down the field, it's like I said, screens. They've been trying to get Garrett on those big screens. They haven't really been able to scheme it up yet. But, for example, you send Garrett on it, you send Gibson on it. Gibson, I get that they're really only using him as a gadget player. I didn't really see any evidence that he can run routes. Even in the preseason, it was mostly on drag routes across the middle. But with the ball in his hands, he's a weapon. And so you want to, try to send a screen to him or a slant to him or something like that, try to get him in the open field and give him a little bit of opportunity for yak. I think that's something that you can try to do also. We're talking about man coverage, though. I happen to have noticed that the Giants sometimes in zone coverage blow coverages. Their communication on the second level is not great. So you'll see, I noticed it a number of times where I was watching Deonte Banks' film, and he'll be pointing at someone, pick him up, and the guy is not picked up for a good few seconds. So, if you can just read, where they're passing off and go to where they're passing off coverage and zone, probably can get some big plays that way.
All right, let's talk about the Jets defense versus the Giants offense. Rivka, if you're the Jets, would you rather face Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones?
I was just on, actually, right before we came on here, I was just watching, Blitz with Joe and Kyle. And, they were saying Taylor because they said they think, that Tyrod hasn't looked good against the Giants in the past. Having watched both Taylor and Jones play this year, I have to say the Giants offense has looked a lot better with Taylor under center. By the same token, Saquon Barkley didn't play in most of those games. So it could simply be that Saquon Barkley is back. The other thing I would say is that if the Giants schemed for Jones the way they've been scheming for Taylor, it could be that Jones would have looked a lot better, and then my answer would be different. As of right now, the way they both played, Jones would definitely be the better option because he hasn't been able to get the ball out of his hands. Yes, he's been under a ton of pressure, but you watch some of those plays and it's like, oh man, how you get frustrated when Zach takes an 11-yard sack because he couldn't throw the ball away. It was happening on every play. Given that, I would just say based on the way Jones has played this year, the answer would be Jones. But first of all, Taylor's going to start. It's almost guaranteed. But second of all, I don't know how much of a difference it makes, ultimately in terms of the Jets game plan or anything else really. Jones may have a better arm at this stage in his career, but Taylor's completed more deep passes. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I guess I know you said Tyrod Taylor hasn't had the best results against the Jets, but he beat us in 2015 those two games, and so I can't. Tyrod Taylor I just view as a Jet killer. I guess we'll start with the Giants' offensive line. Michael, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but maybe one of the few units that you can confidently say is worse than the Jets. The Jets' offensive line has been a little bit better this year, but been a shit show. Faced a lot of injuries, like you said. They've had quarterback issues as well, but obviously that culminated in that Monday night game against the Seahawks where they gave up 11 sacks. Is this the game where this Jets defensive line really gets going and they've had some great games, don't get me wrong, but can get the 6, 7, 8 sacks? Do you view that? And I'll start with you, Michael. Do you view this as the most tantalizing matchup they've had so far?
Yeah, this is the opportunity to do it because, the Giants offensive line is as bad as any in the league this year. I think anyone who's been forced to watch Giants primetime games knows that. How many have they had already? 3 or 4? Whatever it is, it's 3 or 4 too many.
Yeah, 3.
We're getting Raiders games every week. Come on. We need more Jets. Just look at the ratings. It's coming up, though.
I think that's true. They're going to have the Chargers game. But I think that Raiders game is getting flexed out. Not to burst your bubble. But then they get the Dolphins Black Friday game a couple weeks. We're going to get some prime time.
I wouldn't be so sure. The Raiders are 3-3. Jets are 3-3.
America want that
Aren't
game,
you going
Michael.
to that Raiders game?
I am going to that game.
I think I'm going to go too. If they beat the Giants, I think I'm going to go. But that's a 125 game. I'm sorry. They're going to flex the 49ers and the Jags or something like that. Come on. America doesn't want to watch Zach Wilson versus Jimmy G or Brian Hoyer.
They've been watching Zach Wilson all year.
Hey, that's true. I shouldn't say that. You're right. The Jets have the most watched games. So I guess.
But against better teams.
Yeah, that's true. Right. I think that game gets flexed. But
we'll see. But bottom line, we've all been subjected to too much of the Giants' offensive line this year. So this is definitely the game to get the sacks going because, and really just in general, the whole defensive line, because I think they've been good so far for sure. But there were some games where, like the Dallas game, not quite to the level you want to see. The Patriots game, not quite to the level of dominance you want to see. And they turned it up the past few games. But overall, I think they still have room to get closer to where they were last year and then step even further beyond that to make their case to potentially be the best pass rush in the league, because they can be that. I think they do have that ability, but we've got to see some more of it. And they played some really good O-lines. They played the Chiefs, they played the Eagles, Cowboys are up there. So they played some really good competition, but now you got the Giants, the Chargers, the Raiders. These are some really good opportunities to make some plays, especially finishing them, which has been an issue for the Jets, or not necessarily an issue, but they over the past couple of years have been higher in stuff like hits and pressures than sacks. But against the Giants, a team that has already given up 37 sacks this year, which is, I just looked at the number and like I had to double check to make sure that was right. That is insane. 37 sacks this year. You got a chance to have one of those 6-7 sack performances like they had a few last year.
Seahawks got 11. Seahawks got 11. Maybe the Jets can get 10.
11.
The Seahawks got those with a lot of unblocked blitzes.
That's true.
It's one thing to just point out. I mean, that was a primetime game, so I don't know if you guys saw it, but that game. I mean, by the end, it was like every play.
Yeah,
just completely unblocked.
Yeah, they collapsed a bit, and like the Jets run a lot of. I mean, obviously last game against the Eagles, they ran almost entirely zone coverage. They didn't have DJ Reed. They didn't have Sauce Gardner. And we know as a whole, kind of the philosophy of this Jets defense is to take away the big explosive plays. They play their too high shell. They'll mix in some man coverage on third downs, but they're going to rush 4, play coverage, and make the quarterbacks, dink and dunk and work their way down the field. And if the Jets are able to get either a big play like a sack or turnover, maybe a penalty, that'll kill drives. And that's kind of been the MO of the solid defense. But occasionally when the matchup is right, we've seen them lean into a little bit more of the man coverage and to load the box. And Rivka, do you kind of agree with me that this is one of those matchups where you look at it, it's like the only way, I mean, for the Giants to win, if I'm a Giants fan, I'm thinking, okay, on defense, if our defense comes to play and Wink Martindale is really throwing the kitchen sink at Zach Wilson, he starts to implode a little bit. We're able to get some sacks and some turnovers and maybe a touchdown on defense. For this Giants offense, you're not looking at this matchup against the Jets defense as necessarily favorable, but you say the one thing that the Giants do have is they have Saquon Barkley. This Jets defense has given up. I mean, they've been pretty good against the run overall, I would say, but there's been a few instances, like I think of that Jaleel McLaughlin screen against the Broncos where they were able to break that for a touchdown. Like if you're a Giants fan, you're thinking low scoring game, Giants defense creates some big plays, and then maybe Saquon Barkley is able to have a productive 100-yard rushing game. So if I'm the Jets, I'm saying there's no chance in hell that I feel that Jalen Hyatt I know preseason incompletion aside, is beating man coverage against Sauce Gardner or, Jets have DJ Reed or Michael Carter. I feel like they can go man coverage, single box or single high safety, stack the box and focus on stopping Saquon Barkley. Do you agree with me, or is that a recipe for disaster considering, Darren Waller hit him over the top, Tyrod Taylor, like you said, has completed more deep passes than Daniel Jones? How do you kind of see Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich kind of approaching this Giants?
So
offense?
I could see them possibly doing it. I don't think they're going to do that though. I think that they're going to stick with, what they like to do, because I don't think they're that intimidated by the Giants offense. They don't feel like they need to go into some specialized game plan. They like to play their game. So assuming that the corners are both back, I think that they'll play their regular shell and count on their defense. Like basically their plan is we'll give up yardage between the 20s, but we count on our defense to force you into mistakes at some point. So we'll limit you to field goals, or we'll force you, either you turn the ball over or we'll force you to punt. They're not. And the biggest thing, the Giants offense was going to run through Barkley and through Waller. Unfortunately for the Jets, those are two areas where they've kind of struggled this year. I mean, covering tight ends has always been not a great thing for their defense. And, and the running backs, especially in the first half. So I think they're going to go with what they normally do. Their zone on first and second down and more man with a blitz on third down, like their typical thing. Because I think also they'll think that, they can get home with 4 and, and I think that, they like how their run fit works even though, cover 4, right. Quarters is known to be, that's why like people will shift to, and at least in the past, it was like you'd shift to a run play when you saw quarters. The Jets like their run fit out of quarters. So, I think that the biggest thing in this game actually is for the safeties and the linebackers too, but really the safeties to keep their their responsibilities and to take good angles to the ball. Like we've seen from both Adams and Whitehead, we've seen from Whitehead for the last 2 years, a lot of over pursuit, which is what turns, good gains into big gains. Like even the McLaughlin play that you mentioned, Adams missed the tackle on that play. Right. Took a bad angle to the ball. And there was another one where like he just like ran down the sideline. It was like Adams just ran. There was a block and he tried to run under the block instead of over the top of it. And so again, he turned even if it had been a 15-yard gain, he turned it into a 35-yard gain. And again, the Jets defense is predicated on not giving up big plays and forcing you to methodically move the ball down the field. I think they're going to stick with that. I don't think that they're going to feel like they need to force the envelope in any way. Maybe I'm wrong. But from what, and it also could be from what we're seeing is that they've been taking a while to adjust, right? Because we're seeing a tale of two halves. So it could very well be that We'll see them come out in their base, their regular nickel quarters looks, and then in the second half we'll see them switch.
I tell you one thing, that the one thing they do have in their back pocket, because you're probably right. I mean, the Giants aren't an offense that strikes fear into anybody, and the Jets defense has been so good. So why mess with something that's not broken? But the one thing they do have in their back pocket is putting sauce on Darren Waller, especially if in the first quarter, the Giants march down the field and get a touchdown drive, and Waller is a big part of that. He's essentially the number one receiver. A big physical corner like Sauce Gardner, he gives you that flexibility. We saw him do it a little bit against Travis Kelce last year as a rookie. We saw him do it against Mark Andrews. He hasn't done it too often in his career because it does kind of mess with what the Jets do on defense with that shell quarters look. But he does give him that flexibility. Michael, is there any matchup for this Jets defense on this Giants offense? I mean, look, the defensive line versus this Giants offensive line is littered with them. But in the secondary, is there something that you see that is you're looking at as something the Jets have the edge in?
Well, I'm curious to see how they handle the screens to Barkley, because we know they want to get him the ball. They'll use him in the passing game. And whenever he's out there for them, say what you want about his game and where he is at this stage of his career, but you can't argue with the difference in how the Giants offense looks when he's out there versus when he's not. So I think they're going to try to get him the ball, and they're going to do that in the passing game as well. So I want to see if, the linebackers and the safeties are ready to make some of those plays, because we have, for the most part, they've been, I think, pretty good. But, like the Denver play and that Tony Adams mistake, and there have been a few others. They have, and they also let, DeAndre Swift caught a touchdown on them last week. So there have been some running back plays in the passing game against them. So I think the Giants are going to try to get Barkley involved, and I'm curious to see if they're ready for that. But I mean, up front, talking about the Jets D-line against the Giants O-line, I mean, without Andrew Thomas out there, who, is one of the best left tackles in the league, he's developed into. But other than him, there isn't really anyone you look at and say, well, at least they have that guy. It's kind of just holes everywhere. So, I mean, everyone has a chance to eat in this game. So that's really the big equalizer, because, the Jets offense against the Giants defense, we'll see how that goes, because the Jets have questions to answer with their 32nd ranked third down, 32nd ranked red zone. They have a lot of questions to answer, and they're playing a Giants defense that, last two games against a very good Bills offense shut them down, and a Commanders team that, isn't great, but they've had multiple 30-point games, and they held them to 7 points. So the Jets offense, we'll see how that goes, but the biggest reason you can feel confident in the Jets in this game is that it is just very difficult to see how the Giants are going to possibly hold the Jets defense to anything less than a great game in terms of pass rushing. Like, if they get 3 or 4 sacks, I think the Giants will be pretty happy with that result. But the potential is a lot higher than that. So this is a real chance for the pass rush to boost its numbers.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the reason why I would rather face Daniel Jones, is because, and you saw it last game against Jalen Hurts, so the Jets had a kind of a tough time corralling him. The Jets have struggled a little bit against mobile quarterbacks, and look, Tyrod Taylor isn't the same mobile quarterback that he was maybe earlier in his career, but don't get it twisted. I mean, he can get out of the pocket. He can pick up those 10, 15-yard scrambles. He can be infuriating on third downs. So Rivka, is that a big key for the Giants? Is Taylor using his legs and kind of exploiting what Russell Wilson, what Patrick Mahomes, some of these other mobile quarterbacks have been able to do against this Jets defense?
So first of all, I should point out that Jones is a far better runner than
I know he is, but in the pocket though, I feel like Taylor, he's easier to bring down than Tyrod Taylor. But you're right, Jones probably is
in the pocket. Maybe you're right. Yeah. You're right in the pocket. Once he's out of the pocket, though, he's actually right. He looks like this. He's the 6'5", like totally unathletic, skinny kind of guy. And then he runs and you watch him and you're like, wow, he's more.
No, he's got the straight line speed. He's got the straight line speed. Yeah. It's the pocket.
No, but he makes it like sometimes he breaks tackles, he makes moves. But you are right about that. Yeah, it could be that Taylor more maneuverability in the pocket could be a bigger issue. I mean, I think he has 10 rushes for 53 yards over the last couple of games. So he has, 5 for 24 in one game and 5 for 29 in the other game. So, he'll do it if he has to. He's not going to take off and run all day, but he definitely still has some mobility. And that's been a problem for the Jets defense this year. At the same time, I don't think they're going to do anything differently. Like, I don't think they're going to spy him or anything like that. Unlike they did spy Hurts. They spied, with Mahomes, the thing is they did spy him at times and he still got out of it. Yeah. It's something definitely to look out for. I think it's, other than you have Waller, Barkley, and the quarterback, getting out of the pocket. But the only thing is, hopefully from the Jets end is that they can get enough pressure quickly enough to prevent him from being able to move out, especially if that pressure comes, up the middle, and then the edges are closing the pocket. I mean, again, the Giants 5 across. I mean, there's no one on their offensive line who, no matter who's on the edge. I mean, JJ should have a chance to stack a third good game. Especially with he's been bull rushing more. He should be able to do that. Huff, wherever he lines up, should be able to do have another terrific game. Quinnen maybe can get some sacks. Padding a little bit, Quentin Jefferson, all of them, should just be able to, get through on. And if you get through on enough guys quickly enough, that should be able to, contain at least the threat of getting out of the pocket or running.
All right, Rivka, we're going to do something we do on this podcast for all the preview pods. Where are the Jets better? We're going to go through each position group and briefly go and where we think which team is better. And this might be a bloodbath. We try to be unbiased. We try to argue things from the other side, but we'll start with the quarterback, which Taylor versus Zach Wilson. I mean, Rivka, I'll go to you first. I mean, as sad as it is to say, I guess the Giants, but I kind of want to say the Jets.
I'm going push. I'm going pick them.
All right, we'll go
it depends on the week. It depends on a lot of different things because a lot of the Giants fans are relying on the fact that Zach's going to turn the ball over. But other than those 3 picks that he threw against Dallas when the game was pretty much already out of reach, he's done a reasonably decent job protecting the football. Like, yeah, that pick against Denver was bad. It was a bad throw, even though I still think Garrett should have broken it up, but it was a bad throw. It was a bad throw. It definitely should have been thrown back shoulder, but at the same time, I don't think that ball should have been picked off. He obviously had the terrible pick to Milano in the first game this season, but
that was the real bad one.
Yeah, but
the last one against Dallas too, where he just sailed.
But I mean, again, Dallas I take with a grain of salt.
Right.
The whole thing. So again, he has I think a 2.7% turnover worthy play rate, which is like half of what it was last year.
He's actually not really the quarterback that is super turnover prone. He just has games where he implodes and then he has the 3 or 4 turnovers. But if you look at his career, he's had a number of games where he's, maybe he hasn't been good in that game, but he's at least taken care of the ball or hasn't had a turnover. And then he'll have a game against the Patriots where he has 4 interceptions and that kind of skews it a little bit one way. But yeah, I agree. I guess it's safe to say push, although I would hope by, maybe a month from now, we feel pretty safe about saying Zach Wilson, but at this point,
I agree. I would say push as well. Just because we like the progress Zach Wilson is making, but at the end of the day, the production is the production. They're not putting up points. They're not, he's protecting the ball, but beyond that, the proof isn't really there to say the Jets are a threat offensively. It's really not that much different than what the Giants are doing, if you're being honest about what we're seeing. And Zach Wilson has more around him than the Giants quarterbacks have had. So it's fair to say push right now, but like you said, hopefully in a few weeks, we look back and we're like, wow, we really said Tyrod is a push against Zach Wilson. But Tyrod doesn't turn the ball over either. He doesn't have any interceptions this year. And he's always been a low
career-wise, he's always
interception
been a
guy. That's always been his game. He's never really been a playmaker. He's a check down guy. He'll take a lot of sacks. He'll scramble. So you've always had that cap on your offense with him, but he's always been great at keeping the interceptions low. So they're kind of similar in terms of what I feel like they bring to the table. But obviously Zach is the higher ceiling, so let's hope he can tap into that. But push feels fair.
All right. We might have another push here. Running back. Saquon versus Breece. I mean, we can evaluate
Breece
the whole.
Breece is better than Saquon right now.
By every metric and
all right. I was trying to be fair. All right, we're going Jets.
Oh, the
Rivka?
two Giants fans
we're-
listening.
That's true. Well, sometimes on YouTube you get the opposing fans. Rivka, you say it's pretty.
So I
safe to
think
say
it's
Brees?
pretty clearly Brees,
right.
statistically, but it's also Barkley hyperextended his elbow last week, and he's going to play. But he did fumble in the red zone late in the game last week that allowed Washington to nearly come back and tie the game. And it was pointed out I think Tiki Barber pointed out he would know a thing or two about fumbling in a Giants uniform.
Yeah, and we got Tiki on the call this week too.
Yeah, so Barkley has not been a fumbler in his career in general. I think he only has like 4 career. He has a very low number of career fumbles, but at the same time, he may have fumbled last week in part because he couldn't get that ball fully securely tucked, or he had it in the wrong arm because he hurt his elbow. And he's still, again, he's only a couple weeks back from a high ankle sprain. So again, he's been, he had a 32-yard touchdown on a dump off last week. And, he's had a few nice plays. And the truth is a lot of Brees's production has been predicated on a few big plays. But by the same token, I think just in terms of, and I'm not saying Barkley's bad by any stretch. The underlying numbers may not be as kind to him as they are to Brees, but he's still a very shifty back that you have to keep your eye on. But I think just in terms of if you put those two guys in the same situation, all things being equal, Brees would be significantly better than Barkley.
Our reputation doesn't count for anything going forward. I was trying to be fair, give Saquon, he does have the name, but like you said, I guess Brees has
he's had what, 2 major injuries in his career? Obviously, Brees is coming off a torn ACL, but Brees is also, and it could be Saquon coming out of college and Brees coming out of college were similar. But, I think at this point, Brees is better than Barkley.
All right, receiver, feel pretty safe about putting the Jets on this one with Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard, but Rivka, I'll defer to you.
I mean, the way they've been playing this year, certainly, Garrett Wilson, there's no real Giants receiver who's done anything outside of Wan'Dale Robinson, who catches balls generally like 4 yards past the line of scrimmage. Again, the potential's there, and Tyrod Taylor has hit a few deep balls to Darius Slayton that Jones just couldn't get done. But you would know from fantasy, right? There's no Giants receiver who's worth picking up because none of them have done it. They have some guys who have talent, but I don't know whether it's because of they're just not getting open, whether it's because there's no time to throw it, or whether because of the quarterback play. There's no Giants receiver that's really made any impact. So I think even though the Jets receiving core is very bare, I think just because of the upside of Garrett Wilson, you have to go Jets. I don't know, Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Just because of Garrett Wilson, I think that puts him over the top, like you said.
All right, tight end. Look, the Giants, again, have the name value with Darren Waller, although, Michael, you wrote that article about Tyler Conklin this week that was pretty convincing, how he deserves maybe more praise and maybe more props of being towards the upper echelon, maybe not the upper echelon, but maybe a tier 2, tier 3 tight end towards that top 10, just given the production that he's given the Jets this year, not necessarily in the box score, but what he does and the dirty work that he does for this offense. So, Michael, I'll go to you first this time. Conklin or Waller? I guess we could throw in your favorite guy, CJ Uzomah, in there. Also, Jeremy Ruckert. I mean, I think this Jets tight end room is probably deeper, but does Waller bring you the higher ceiling? How do you feel?
Yeah, this one's interesting because, like I wrote in that article, I think Conklin's had a really underrated season in the sense that, his box score production isn't great, but what he's done with his opportunities has been excellent. His hands, his route running, even his yak has been high ranking this year. So I really think he should be getting more targets, being more involved, but he's played at a high level. They're deep, like you said. Ruckert's been a great blocker. Uzomah plays. That's about it. But, with Waller, like, I haven't really watched the Giants super closely. So, I mean, Rivka, maybe you would know better, like, about how well he's really playing because, the numbers, they're solid. They're solid, but they don't look great to me. But again, I haven't really watched. Obviously, it's not a great situation. There's terrible pass protection, not good quarterback play. So I'm sure that hurts. But, there's a question of, like, what does he have going into this year? He's 31 years old. His production went down the last 2 years. So, I mean, what do you think? I would defer to you on this one because we love Conklin. The Jets have some depth, but Waller obviously is the most talented, high upside guy here. Is he still that player enough to put them over the Jets?
So I think Waller in his prime was a top, I don't know, even sometimes 3-4 tight end in the NFL. Yeah. He's definitely not that anymore. I mean, maybe if you put him in a better offense, but I think he's just not that anymore. But is he better than Conklin? I do think so. I still think his just Conklin deserves more love and more targets than he gets. I think Waller just as a go-to, he can still be your number one threat in an offense, and you can succeed in such an offense if you have the protection to do it. And he can't. The Giants' plan this year of having Waller to feature Waller wasn't necessarily a terrible plan. It's more just that everything else has gone terribly. That being said, Waller earlier in the season had some plays that you looked at and you said, you got to catch that. I mean, I've said that about Garrett Wilson too, but with Waller, 6'6", you watch it. I mean, they had an interception where it's like, oh my gosh.
Wait. Well, what plays is Garrett Wilson?
We've had a couple.
Where's the Garrett Wilson slander coming out of nowhere?
I sent you a play today where I said Garrett has to catch that ball, but Michael, but he's had a few where you're like, okay, come on, Garrett, catch the ball.
There were a couple.
Catch the ball. I mean, sometimes it's a bad throw, whatever.
He's also had some where he's bailed Zach out a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that too. I mean, that 30-yard catch was, a contested catch. He went over top of a defender that had.
You thought it was a good throw. You thought that was a good throw.
I stand by. It was a good throw.
I think it was. I think again, could it have been better? Possibly, yeah. But I think it was. It was, but at the same time, it wasn't an easy catch.
He puts it out in front of him. Garrett Wilson gets depleted.
Probably. But if he puts it maybe a yard past where he does, it would have been a slightly easier catch. But again, but that's a catch that Garrett last year often didn't make, right. And even this year we've seen him at times where he has. Everyone's talking about he nearly made that phenomenal one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone. And I was like, why don't you go up with two hands?
Hey,
I mean, maybe I'm being overly critical.
He also had he high pointed against Philly.
Oh, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about against the Eagles.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry.
No, not that one. No, that one should have been an interception, and he made a crazy catch.
Yes.
I'm talking about the one in the corner of the end zone against the Eagles. It was a first down where he tried to throw it up, and Garrett goes up with one hand. It wasn't open, and it could be that two hands that would have just gone over his head, but he also mistimed his jump a bit. So I'm just talking about, again, I didn't expect him to catch that. I just was hoping for a better attempt. But Waller has had a few times where there was a ball that was thrown to him that was high, but you're like, okay, come on. You're a 6'6" target. You're supposed to be really athletic. Come down with that ball. Like he had some of them early in the season. He also had it where they just weren't targeting him that much. Early in the year, they just kind of couldn't get it going. And, that could be a Tyrod Taylor thing or it could just be the way that they're running their offense. I haven't looked so deeply into that as to why, sorry about that. Why Waller is let's say is doing better, but he's definitely still a weapon. And we've seen Farrell Brown score 50 something yard touchdown against the Jets. We've seen, various other Adam Troutman had a touchdown against the Jets, right? It was, we've seen lesser names. Yeah. So exactly. So we've seen lesser names than Darren Waller do significant damage to the Jets. I think that at this point, it's still fair to put Waller over Conklin, although it's definitely not as vast as Giants fans would probably say. And even Jets fans.
Yeah, and then when you factor in the rest of the room and the blocking and the Jets' ability, I think the Jets have a greater ability to open up their 12 and their 13 personnel looks than the Giants do. So a room as a whole, I still think I'd take the Jets room, but I know that Darren Waller is probably the best.
Is Daniel Bellinger
any good? Daniel Bellinger as a blocker is generally pretty good. I have not, looked too closely at how he's doing this particular year, but I mean, last year he was a very strong blocker. The thing is Waller doesn't really block. So, I mean, the Jets, again, Uzama can definitely be spotty with that. But, between, Conklin, I feel like has done a pretty good job, especially in the run game. I feel like this year, he's been better than last year. Yeah. At least from what I could see.
Are we going tight end Jets or Giants?
I think that if you're going with the room, I would lean Jets, although I would say that it's slight. If you're going with the top end potential, I still have to go Giants.
So we go push.
We got to go push. This has been we were going back and forth here. I think you got to maybe say push.
Right. Push. Offensive tackle. Maybe it's a different discussion if Andrew Thomas is playing. Evan Neal also questionable, although he's been pretty terrible. Without it, I would take the Jets offensive tackles with all their struggles and injuries this year. I would still take it over what the Giants have. But Rivka, again, I'll defer to you. You've watched this Giants offensive line a lot closer. Do Becton and Max Mitchell clear Justin Pugh and who are they going to try out at right tackle?
Tyree Phillips, who they just re-signed after inexplicably cutting him before the season started. But yeah, they just put another tackle on IR and Matt Parrott. So the Giants, if you think the Jets offensive line is hurt, I mean, John Michael Schmitz has also missed the last few games and is probably going to miss another one. So, if you thought the Jets offensive line is hurt, just look at the Giants. But I think ultimately you look at the four positions right now, Becton is the best of the four. And I'm not, Justin Pugh just came off the couch. He like trademarked it and made t-shirts out of it and everything. He's selling it, straight off the couch. For a guy who's straight off the couch, he's done definitely an adequate job, but he's still straight off the couch.
Right.
And also he hadn't played tackle in like 7 or 8 years. So, but he was forced into tackle duty. Like he really is a left guard. And, he's been playing tackle because the Giants have like no one else to play. So he's still a left tackle. I think it's fair to question whether Max Mitchell is better than both Giants tackles. I don't necessarily say that that's the case. Again, it's hard to say with players who really haven't played much this year. All three of them, technically. Both Giants tackles, and then Mitchell hasn't played that much.
A couple games.
But I think between the three of them, it's mostly a toss-up even. Phillips played last year. His pressure rates were pretty high, but he wasn't a total disaster when Neal was out. Again, Pugh is, I think he probably in the run game is doing a bit of a better job, but as a pass blocker, he's kind of struggling. I think, though, just because of Becton, you could say what you want about Becton, but he's made enough plays this year. And given, that the Jets can get something done, again, he's given up his sacks. He's had his lapses in the run game, definitely. But I still think of the four players here, Becton is by far the best of the four. And therefore, I think you have to give the Jets the advantage in terms of tackle.
Yeah, Michael, I would imagine you agree with that.
I agree.
I'll go to you first then with the interior of the offensive line. Jets or Giants, obviously. McGovern, Lakin. Doesn't seem like Tittman's going to play in this game, so probably Schweitzer versus, you mentioned John Michael Schmitz. We'll see if he plays in this game. Mark Lewinsky and Ben Bredesen are the two guards for the Giants.
Bredesen's playing center if Schmitz doesn't play, so it would be.
So who fills in then?
So it's been Marcus. Okay, they all call it McKethan, but to me it's McKeithen until you say otherwise. So Marcus McKeithen, who was I think their 5th or 6th round pick last year, missed the whole season with a towards ACL or whatever, and then came back and was forced into action because everyone's been hurt. Bredesen missed the game with a concussion, and
I hope the Jets win this one. I hope the Jets.
Look, you're talking about the Jets' interior offensive line. There was actually a question on they ran a poll on SB Nation about if Schmitz comes back, which guard combination should the Giants run, and they had like 4 options. So So let Michael answer. Who's the interior offensive line? Do you think it's the
I don't think there are a lot of teams in the league the Jets interior would beat without Tittman, without AVT, but the Giants are probably one of them. I was just looking at their snap distributions here with the Giants offensive line, and it's crazy. They've had at least 3 different players play every single offensive line position, and we're 6 or 7 games into the year, so that's wild. So definitely giving interior to the Jets.
Just simply for being starters, at least 2 of them.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the defense. We'll start with the edge rushers. The Giants have Kayvon, but I think this is pretty clearly the Jets with Bryce Huff, with Jermaine Johnson, Carl Lawson could be his last Jets game. Will McDonald, we'll see if he gets a little bit more run. JFM, I don't know how I didn't throw him out there first. I think pretty obviously the Jets win this one. Everybody in agreement?
Yeah.
And I would just add, I see Kayvon and JJ as very similar players in a lot of ways. Not very bendy around the edge, not necessarily great at using their hands. But as much as the knock on Kayvon was that he's not a high effort guy, if you watch his plays, most of his sacks and most of his pressures are on high effort, where he, kind of like JJ, where a lot of times he doesn't win cleanly, but he'll, make an effort down the field. Like I know even last year, Thibodeau's average depth of tackle was very, very high. And it was like maybe the highest among qualified edge rushers. And it was because he'll run 10, 15 yards downfield to make a tackle, kind of like what we saw JJ do. So I see them as very similar, but I think the Giants don't have anyone else on the edge because Azeez Ojulari's on IR. And they're basically starting Jihad Ward on the other side. You remember Jihad Ward, right? The guy who with
Yes.
Rodgers. He is basically probably one of the worst edge rushers in the NFL, both as a run defender and a pass rusher in terms of someone who's getting significant snaps. But he's Wink Martindale's favorite, so he plays.
All right. Well,
I don't know who that is.
He'll be meeting
Wink
Mekhi.
Martindale?
No, he's talking. He's
No,
Jalen Ward.
rushers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
He'll be meeting
Exactly.
Mekhi, but maybe the Jets will run some gap runs this game, and maybe Jahab Ward can run into Mekhi Becton, pulling across the field and just a little introduce himself, just for a little payback from preseason. The interior of the defensive line, I mean, this one's actually close. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is a damn good defensive tackle. They also have Leonard Williams, Jets legend. But the Jets have Quentin Williams. And, I mean, I also think Quentin Jefferson's been pretty solid this year. I mentioned JFM with the edge rusher, so I'll keep him out there. Rivka, I'll go to you first. I mean, who has the better interior, the Jets or the Giants? Or is this a push?
So this is one where the Giants fans are going to say it's clearly the Giants because they're going to say Dexter Lawrence is better than Quentin Williams.
Get out of here.
And then I would say, based on the way they play totally different positions, first of all.
Right.
Dexter Lawrence plays 0 or 1 tech. He plays a nose. Quentin plays 3 tech. So it's what they're doing and what they're asked to do is very different. Quentin 1 gaps, Lawrence 2 gaps. It's just a different thing. I think they're both really good at what they do. I would say that they're, again, Quentin had more sacks last year, but part of that was because, again, how many sacks does a 2-gapping nose tackle usually get? 7.5 sacks is very high for a 2-gapping nose tackle. I think their pressure rates were very similar. Most of their numbers last year were very similar. This year, I think Lawrence might have slightly better stats in certain areas, but, Quentin and others, and, both of their impact on their run defense is hard to quantify sometimes. Again, Leonard Williams is not what he used to be. And even what he used to be, I think, was a little overrated. But at the same time, he's still a decent run defender. He still can get his pressures. Again, beyond them, A'Shawn Robinson hasn't really done anything this year. Raheem Nunez Roches hasn't really done anything this year. But again, has Al Woods done much this year?
You got a safety.
Okay, on basically a coverage sack.
4 seconds.
A coverage, intentional grounding. So, I'm tempted to say push. Could be that Quentin Jefferson's superior pass rush over Leonard Williams would tilt it to the Jets a little bit, but I feel like it's pretty similar. The other thing I should just also note is because the Giants play a 3-4, they do sometimes play where they play the 3-3-5, where they have 3 defensive linemen, 3 interior linemen, and then edge rushers on the edge where you have a 5-man front. So it's a little bit different in that way when you're talking about interior rush. If you have 3 men out there, they've done it less recently, but they were doing it sometimes earlier in the season. So it's 2 different schemes and 2 different responsibilities. So it's very hard to compare.
Michael, any thoughts before we move to the linebackers, which should be a Jets bloodbath?
This one is kind of tough because Quentin is great, but obviously the Jets. Quentin has been great as the second defensive tackle. I think with what you expect from that position, his pass rushing has been really solid, really efficient. But Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams is a good duo too. But Leonard Williams has kind of shown some decline this year. Maybe this is he's starting to reach his fall off stage. I can't believe he's in his 9th year at this point. But I don't know. Does push seem fair for this one?
Let's go with a push. All right, fine. Linebacker, very clear. Jets win. Everybody
not as close, not as clear as you think it is.
Come on. Quincy Williams playing
again. Bobby Okereke is playing. He didn't start off the year so well, but he's playing very well as a 2-way linebacker. Now, I'm not saying again, and the only reason I would say Jets here is because Mosley has been playing better in coverage than Micah McFadden, but McFadden has been doing a very, very good job against the run over the last few games also, and they've both been very active in the game. So even though, again, Quincy's playing extremely well, right? He's playing, I wouldn't have imagined that he's going to take the kind of leap that he has just in certain areas, like his tackling has just been so much better this year. And his, a lot of his awareness and coverage has been better. I'm not saying he's been perfect, but just like those parts of his game that were, deficient, he's really raised his floor in those areas. And it just makes him, together with his speed and his instincts, like it just makes him a monster. Mosley has had a lot of good, he's had some bad moments too, but he's had a lot of good plays this year. A lot of good moments, a lot of, I thought he was a bit overrated in coverage, but if you watch him, I mean, he definitely has some lapses, but he's also made a lot of really good plays. Like, when you watch him, you're like, he really knows what he's doing out there. Like, you could see sometimes why the Jets think so highly of him, even though his physical skills may have declined significantly from where he was when they signed him. Again, I would give the Jets an advantage, but I don't think it's as major as you think it is.
Michael, agree? Jets?
I mean, I couldn't speak as much on,
I know. There's nothing for me to say because you've watched the Giants games more than I have.
But I would give it to the Jets.
All right. Rivka, can we agree this one's a bloodbath corner? Can we just agree?
Yeah.
All right. We don't even have to give the analysis. We know Jets win there.
And I just have to add that the reason that it's really a bloodbath is the slot corner. I mean, okay, Cordell Flot's played a little bit better recently, but if you look at the numbers, when Adoree Jackson was in the slot, he was giving up 2.55 yards per route run, or yards per cover snap, meaning literally compared to the cover snaps, he's giving 2.5 yards per cover snap. If you think about it, like, I don't know even in the slot, so the average is a little higher, but like, I think like even one is like, I don't remember what the numbers were exactly, but you looked at it, he was like double the next guy.
Jeez.
So,
all right. So this is a Jets win. We feel
no, corner, I don't think there's any question.
Safety. Is Adoree Jackson playing in this game?
That's another question because he hurt he was out with a neck injury last week. So it's a question. If he's not playing, then they'll put in Trey Hawkins, who was their 6th-round pick, who started the season starting at outside corner, which is why they put Jackson in the slot, because they felt that they had 2 outside corners with Banks. And so they put Jackson in the slot. Hawkins didn't play well. Jackson played absolutely horrifically. He didn't know how to play in the slot. I mean, just the things that you have to do, he didn't know how to do. They finally benched Hawkins, put Flott in the slot, put Jackson outside, but now Jackson got hurt, so now they put Hawkins back in. He actually played pretty decently last week. But, I'm not sure if Jackson's going to play or not.
All right, safety. This one's closer than corner, obviously, with Whitehead and Tony Adams.
Now we got an interesting one. Maybe the one Giants win. Maybe.
It's hard to say. Look, McKinney is the most, maybe, again, I hesitate to say that McKinney is the most talented even of the 4 because I wouldn't say that so clearly. I think Adams definitely has, can match that. But then again, if you could say Adams versus Pinnock, I don't know. Pinnock is pretty athletic and, in his own right. The thing with the Giants, particularly McKinney, is that he's a zone safety playing in a man scheme. So, his best year, which was in 2021, came when he played primarily as a single high safety in a cover 3 scheme. So, and now he's been playing in the box a lot or, and a lot of man scheme, different responsibilities, and he hasn't been that impactful. Like just, in terms of like, you think of your safety, you're making plays and things like that. Like he's been most noticeable for missing tackles. So, but then again, you could say the same thing about the Jet safeties, right? Both of them. I mean, until Adams had a better game against Philadelphia, not just that interception, but he also had a couple, nice run stops and, was definitely more involved. But, I think experience-wise, to a large extent, if you look at McKinney versus Whitehead, I feel like you have to go McKinney only because Whitehead's mistakes cost the Jets more. And cause bigger issues. I feel like Pinnock and Adams have similar issues and similar,
I mean,
the
Jets chose Tony Adams over Jason Pinnock directly.
Well, I think that might be part of because of what type of scheme they play, but also because I think what they were trying to do is they thought that it was more likely that they could get Pinnock to the practice squad than Adams. But I think they were hoping to, and it just didn't happen. I think it was also because Pinnock was a converted corner, whereas Adams played corner and safety. So just in terms of familiarity with the position, I think Adams definitely had a leg up from that angle. I don't know. Michael, what do you think?
I would give this to the Giants, I think.
Okay.
Because, to be honest, I think you disagree sometimes, Ben, but I don't think Jordan Whitehead's been playing good this year outside of the first game. I think he's kind of been the same, and he's a minus player.
I didn't say he's playing. I said he's playing better. I said he's playing better than last year. That's what I said.
I said to Joe that he's playing worse.
The same or worse.
Why do you think he's playing worse?
I mean, maybe I'm just like it's revisionist history, but just the number of coverage busts that they've had that seem
true.
mostly attributable to Whitehead have been atrocious. I mean,
I have had a few.
I was watching the 2-point conversion that they gave up against Denver. I know that it wasn't even that one. No, there was the touchdown they gave up to Troutman against Denver, where it seems pretty apparent that Whitehead was the one who blew that coverage. Yeah. The touchdown to Farrell Brown looked like Whitehead. Yeah. There are a few other ones, big
Another one
plays.
Against Dallas.
Again, big plays where it's Whitehead, and just he's really crushing them. I feel like if you say the single biggest negative on the Jets defense this year has been Jordan Whitehead, even more so than
he did make a nice play at the end of the game against the Eagles, though.
If you watch the play,
should have been a pick. Probably,
but if Hurts had released the ball instead of moving backward and taking 2 hitches, the ball could have very well been complete.
Yeah, but was that on what? I'd have to rewatch it again.
Whitehead was underneath.
He got by Bryce Hall, and then Whitehead had to run all the way back and break it up.
No, it's true. I'm not blaming him for that. And he did have 1 or 2 nice plays in coverage in the game. The biggest thing with him also is, besides his lack of awareness and coverage, I think you see him running towards something, and it's like, that's not your responsibility. What are you doing? But also then the tackling, at the very least, let's say Quincy Williams. So before this year, he was, or even let's say from 2021 to 2022. 2021, Williams was just a missed tackle machine and couldn't cover. 2022, he started being much more sure-handed in the run game. Not in the pass game, he still missed a lot of tackles in the passing game. But in the run game, he was better. I don't remember what the numbers were, but I remember noticing that he was wrapping up a lot better. Even if he was lowering his helmet, he was actually making the tackles. And that made the Jets want to sign him, right? Because it was like he makes impactful plays. When you see Whitehead, all you see him doing is lowering his shoulder and missing tackles and letting guys gain another 15
the Eagles
yards.
Touchdown he gave up to Swift because he couldn't wrap up on that tackle.
He almost all right. You were tough on him.
That was Mosley's coverage. Mosley probably should have hit it quicker, but still.
Didn't Whitehead almost jar it free? The ball bobbled and he.
But he still, again, you almost no. You go for the ball. You go first. You have to wrap up. Then you go for the ball.
That cost him against Cincinnati last year too. I remember he went for the ball and then they broke it free for a big 60-yard touchdown. Yeah, exactly.
To what's his name?
Higgins? Boyd. It was Boyd. Yeah. Boyd. All right, last thing, and there was actually a listener who said we should include this in our comparison: coaching, which is an interesting conversation because I think last year a lot of people would have said Dable, who came in. Giants had low expectations. A lot of people thought that was the year they were going to be pretty bad and made the playoffs. I mean, Dable did an excellent job, and this year he's been under a lot more heat. I will say every time I watch a Giants game, Dable is red in the face and stomping and yelling at somebody like he's not the head coach of the team. So I would give it to Saleh, considering all he's had to deal with this season with the adversity of Rodgers and having to rally back around Zach Wilson, who this team gave up on last year, and they have themselves 3-3 at the bye. Obviously, it's hard to give judgment on either of these guys until we see what it's like in January at the end of the season. But through 6 weeks, I think it's pretty clear the Jets have been coaching better football than the Giants have. Would you guys agree?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was impressed with Dable last year, but from what I've seen, it really feels like the Giants coaching has taken a step back this year. I feel like they schemed it up so well for Jones last year. And he had a good year, but it seemed like they really set him up for success. But this year it kind of feels like the opposite. And, some of the things I've seen from Dable with not taking accountability, kind of blaming the players and stuff isn't great. Whereas with Saleh, it's kind of the opposite. Maybe sometimes we feel like he's too player friendly and, he should be a little more harsher, but you like that, the fact that he goes to bat for the team. So yeah, I would say Jets right now. I'm more confident in the way they're coaching.
Yeah, so I have some stuff to say on that because you guys know that Saleh drives me insane, right? I've written a lot of stuff about it.
What?
Saleh drives me bananas. So
why?
Just various things.
I'm very pro Saleh on the podcast.
I see him as not. Again, I like that he defends his players, but sometimes I feel like it's, again, you don't necessarily know what he says to the players, but it feels like there's a lack of accountability at times within the locker room. I don't care what he says to the media, but I'm just talking about things that you see. I don't like to see Dable screaming on the sideline at Jones or whoever, or coming to the podium and saying that Tyrod Taylor was the one who checked into a run play on the last play of the half, so the Giants didn't end up scoring. Like what Zach did, where he threw the ball. So the Giants did the same thing 2 weeks ago, where against Buffalo, they lost the game because they run the ball from the 1 yard line. And he comes out after the game, Daboll, and he says, yeah, Tyrod switched to a run when he wasn't supposed to. I mean, that's just not something you're supposed to do as a coach. I'll tell you what my answer is there. There's a few things. First of all, I think Jeff Ulbrich has very clearly outcoached Wink Martindale from a defensive perspective, just in terms of the game plans that they've come up with for the opponents that they're playing. The Jets and considering what their strengths and weaknesses are, I think the Jets' plan has been better heading into games. Obviously, their defense hasn't played well in the first half, and they've had to adjust. But I do see, like, a lot of times, like, I think Wink is a little bit more stubborn about how, and I've criticized Ulbrich and Saleh for this forever, but I think Wink is a little bit more stubborn about what he wants to do, although he's been a little bit better about that. Offensively, I think it's hard to say that, really, because I've had big criticisms of both offensive staffs. Hackett, I feel like he takes way too long to figure out that what he's doing is not working. They've had way too many plays where he's not scheming up an open receiver, whether that's because he's used to still used to Rodgers just making pinpoint throws or something else. But I don't think it's just the Jets receiving core. I feel like sometimes the schematics are just not great. The way the things are designed, spacing, things like that. But at the same time, what you said about Daboll and Mike Kafka is 100% true. Last year, they basically milked everything they could get out of Daniel Jones, and this year they decided that they wanted to make Jones into a high-flying, hotshot quarterback, and they didn't give in to the fact that it wasn't working until Jones got injured. So, from that angle, it's like, okay, there have been issues on both sides, but I think the Giants were much more stubborn about it. In terms of head coaching, Giants fans are really annoyed about what Saleh said about embarrassing other quarterbacks and claiming it's not, the three top quarterbacks and claiming it's not true. Saleh definitely, puts his foot in it sometimes. Like, last year saying we're going to see them again, we're taking receipts, all those things. Definitely, keeps us calm more. In terms of actual decision making, I feel like Saleh's been pretty okay. And situationally, they had a couple of things. Obviously, the throw to Uzama, it's hard to say whose mistake that was. And then I wanted them to go for it on 4th down against Kansas City, where Zerline missed the field goal. But other than that, I don't know. I feel like for the most part they've been okay. But I don't think the Giants have done too bad of a job with that either. So, in terms of
we got to go with the Jets.
In terms of, I know it's a long-winded way of me saying, of answering the question, but I think I would lean Jets. But in the interest of fairness, I'm going to say that it's not like, blowing out of the water, like, oh gosh, they're so clearly out coaching. I think, you could talk about it, but overall the Jets coaching has been better this year.
Yeah, and especially with the second half adjustments. I think that's really where you really can see the mark of a great coach is how they adjust coming out of the half. And look, I mean, you can criticize the game scripts because that's a week of preparation, and the Jets have not really been, they've been terrible in first quarters, but I think coming out of half and making those adjustments, that is a credit to the coaching staff and doing that in game. And then I know you were talking more about, accountability in the locker room and you don't care what he says to the media. So this is not what you were talking about, but I do think that people take what he says to the media way too seriously. And they don't understand the fact that he gains absolutely nothing for being 100% truthful with the media all the time. Like, especially when it comes to injuries, people get frustrated. And look, like, I understand there are things that can frustrate people about Saleh, but one of them to me is not him being optimistic about a guy playing on Sunday and then he doesn't play. Like, you don't know if that's just – I highly doubt that's him just being completely clueless. I think that's either gamesmanship or sometimes, hey, things just don't heal the way you thought they were going to heal. It's taking a little longer. This is sore now this is hurt and whatever. And, like, people blame him too much for reporting inaccurate injuries. It's like he gains absolutely nothing for being 100% truthful with the media. Now the Giants know exactly who's playing on Sunday. It's like, I don't know. People I feel like are way too critical sometimes of the things that he says to the media, or the fact that he's really positive about Dalvin Cook, and clearly Dalvin Cook has been terrible. It's like, oh, this guy's clueless. It's like, well, hey, it doesn't hurt to talk highly about Dalvin Cook because maybe you're able to trade him. And also, what is there to gain from shitting on Dalvin Cook in the media? You know what I mean? Like, there are things like that fans, I think, take too seriously sometimes, when it's just like, hey, this is just an obligation he has to just talk to the media, give some bullshit coach quotes, and get out of there. He does not owe the fans anything in terms of being like 100% truthful all the time. Now, I get what you're saying in terms of, like, sometimes can he be too player friendly? It's tough for us to know. I mean, we got a little peek inside in Hard Knocks, and we saw him light up the offensive line. And so I think that gave us a different view of Saleh. But again, it's hard to adequately judge these guys as coaches without being in the locker room. I think the one thing we can say is I think the Jets' adjustments have been absolutely stellar this season. I think the offensive coaching staff has a lot of flaws, but look, they've had to change the entire offense on the fly to build around a, let's just be honest, struggling quarterback. I mean, that's the nicest way I can put it. And Zach Wilson, somebody who wasn't supposed to see the field, and they've gotten better results than the last guy got out of him. So I think all things considered, you got to go with the Jets. Now, Rivka, last thing. And also, I don't know if I believe my video is probably frozen.
Yeah. Can I just make one quick comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's so funny. Just today, actually, I pulled up what I wrote at the end of last season. I wrote a Saleh translator, which was what Saleh says versus what he means, about injuries. And it was like, okay, Saleh says the word optimistic. He says he has a chance to play. It means there is absolutely no chance this player is playing. Anything like that. But I wrote other things also about how when Saleh pumps up players, I wrote a few things about this. And then I was telling we were talking about it with the Giants guys, and someone sent something on from Twitter, which was talking about a Dable injury verbiage translator. And I don't remember all the details, but it was like, if he says he's healing nicely, he's going on IR. If he says the guy's going on IR, he's dead.
It's been the case, but people get so upset about that, and I think it's just because to be mad about something or just to be mad about the injury itself. But it's like, I don't care if Robert Saleh is playing things close to the vest when it comes to injuries. Me having an accurate update on Joe Tippmann's quad injury on Wednesday makes absolutely no difference in whether or not the Jets are going to win or lose that game. So I don't really care. By the way, I don't know if my video is frozen because my laptop is completely frozen.
Yeah,
so apologies to those watching on YouTube. I'm sure I'm making some ridiculous face that everybody has to look
okay.
for. All right. Thank God I didn't get frozen. This has happened in the last few episodes. Last thing, got to get a new computer. Last thing, random predictions. Rivka, we'll do the score prediction at the end, but I want one offensive prediction and one defensive prediction. I'll start with the defense. Michael, go to you, and then Rivka. Then we can go to you just so you have some time to think. Random prediction, I'm going to go Quinnen Williams, 2 sacks. That's my one. I know, quite bold going with the best player on defense to have 2 sacks. But you know what? He hasn't piled up that many sacks this year. I think this is the week that he does it. Michael, I'll go to you for your defensive prediction. You got one?
Will McDonald strip sack.
Oh, okay.
By Jermaine Johnson.
He goes too hyper. He gets way too hyper specific. But okay, McDonald, I can't. My computer's frozen, so I can't even write these down, Michael. I'm going to need you to do it in the doc this time. McDonald strip sack recovered by Jermaine Johnson. Rivka, we got a defensive random prediction.
Okay. No, I have to. The defense is tough, especially since you guys both went with things that I would have maybe thought of. So I'll go with that. The Jets are going to get at least 6 sacks.
6 sacks. All right, I like that.
Nice.
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good one. All right, nice little team prediction. And now let's go on the offensive side of the ball. I haven't really thought at all about my offensive prediction. So instead, Michael, I'll go to you first. Let's hear random offensive. Actually, you know what? I have one. You ready for this, Michael? Are you ready for this? And I'll be putting some money on this. My strategy, I said this to Michael, I think last week, maybe it was a few weeks ago. I said, I'm going to just start putting money, $5 every game on an anytime Jeremy Ruckert touchdown, because I feel like he's going to score one this season, and I just want to have it. I feel like his odds are really, I forget exactly which game it was, but his odds were crazy high. And it's like, it's not out of the realm of possibility Jeremy Ruckert scores a touchdown. I believe he's going to get one this season, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. I think he gets it this Sunday against the crosstown rivals, hometown kid.
Can I just jump in there for a second? That in the first game of the season, I didn't end up publishing it, but I was writing a betting, best prop bets, best bet. And 2 of the ones that I had in that article that I didn't publish were Xavier Gipson anytime touchdown and Nick Bawden anytime touchdown. Now Gipson got a touchdown. I think Bawden did. I don't remember. I think it was a Patriot game, right, where he got he got the touchdown. So I was like, I knew that was going to happen eventually. So you're saying Ruckert? I'm saying
it's going to happen with Ruckert. It's going to happen with Ruckert. I think it's this weekend. So that's my bold prediction. Michael, you got one?
I feel like every week I want to say Ruckert because it's a good it's
back off, stay off my territory.
Unlikely enough to be classified as random, but likely enough to where you feel like it actually could happen. So I'm going to say something very random that I think no one would think of. Randall Cobb touchdown.
He's had a couple.
Isn't he hurt right now?
He came back to practice today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a disgusting prediction, Michael. But
There
okay,
you go.
Rivka, do you have one?
Yes, I do. I'm going to say that Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson combined for at least 180 yards of offense.
I like that. That's a much more pleasing prediction to hear than Randall Cobb touchdown. I like the Garrett and Breece involvement.
Last week one of my best bets on the prop bets on Big Blue View was that Saquon Barkley and Terry McLaurin would combine for at least 175 yards of rushing and receiving. They had 186. So I'm like, okay, let's get a streak going here.
All right. Well, then this is the last prediction, and then we'll get out of here. Score prediction, guys. Let's hear it. Jets, Giants.
Did you give? You said Rucker touchdown.
Yeah, I said
right?
Rucker touchdown, Quinn Williams 2 sacks. I went relatively conservative this week with my random predictions, although still random enough that I'm sure if that was a parlay right there, the odds are pretty high. So,
how about one over under? I got an over under 3.5.
Changing the rules. All right, fine. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
3.5. Tiki Barber subtle digs at Zach Wilson.
Oh, over.
Yeah.
The line should be a 10.5.
Yeah.
I'm going to try for the first time. I've never done it. I've heard people have done this before where they sync up Bob Wischusen to the TV. They take the Jets radio and then
I just feel like it wouldn't work good because, like, obviously
I
he's
know
great,
people
but
who
like he
do
calls it on a delay. Like,
yeah,
so
but I'll sync it up.
Look at it at the same time as a video. It's like he's like,
yeah, I'll sync
he
it up.
sees
to
the play and then he describes it.
You sync it. If people sync it up, I wish I could hear Wischusen. I like Wischusen. I love watching his, the call with his. I don't really love Marty Lyons, but I like Wischusen.
I don't know if anybody has any tips on how to do that exactly outside of.
You can probably Google it, I imagine, or ask on Reddit or whatever.
Yeah.
Over under 3.5.
It's gonna be 20.
Yeah.
That guy, didn't he say that Daniel Jones was going to have a better season than Aaron Rodgers this
yes,
season? You know what? I guess technically he was right.
Was that Tiki who said it, or was it
Tiki? Right?
Was it Tiki? Was someone on FAN?
I don't want to slander. I could be wrong, but I believe it was Tiki. All right. Do we have a score prediction?
I'm not totally right because Rodgers is still even in the touchdowns interceptions. Jones is negative.
That's true.
-4.
Yeah, that was a very dumb prediction, to put it mildly. And look, again, having been like on both sides of the aisle, I was like, I don't really care. Jones's best was basically worse than Rodgers' worst. So maybe even I don't know. Did Jones play so much better than Rodgers last year? I don't. Maybe somewhat, but basically that was it. So it's dumb. But anyways, you're going with a score prediction?
Yes.
Michael, what's yours?
So I got a 5-1 record. I did pick the Jets last week, but disclaimer, it was before we knew Sauce and Reed were Reed we may have known, but it was definitely before we knew Sauce was out. I would have picked the Eagles if I knew that, but I did. It says here I picked the Jets, so I'm 5-1.
What was your score prediction?
I said 33-27.
Oh,
I thought it was going to be high score. We all kind of thought that.
I'm 3-3, right?
But I did say they win by 6, so I did nail that.
I'm 3-3, right?
Yeah,
nice.
3-3.
Right.
So I got a 5-1 record on the line.
All right, let's hear it.
I got Jets 17, Giants 9.
Oh, okay. That's
pretty close to what mine was.
All right, let's hear it, Rivka.
Jets 17, Giants 13.
You guys are not believing in this Jets offense. I'm going Jets 27, Giants 10. I think Zach Wilson has a nice game. That's they've been able to move the ball fairly well between the 20s. It's the red zone. And the thing is, maybe if they get some long touchdowns, you know how Zach Wilson had in his rookie year where he had a bunch of balls down at the 1, right? And even last year there were a few before, where I'm sure Michael made a compilation of that.
I mean, think about it. Breece has had a couple of runs where it was he was one ankle tackle away from breaking it for a touchdown, or Garrett Wilson, if he hadn't celebrated instead of going down to try to block the last guy, maybe Breece would have scored on that opening game. But they can't turn it into touchdowns. And that's why it's so devastating when those tackles happen, because that they're not going to score.
Yeah, no.
Something's got to give. Giants are 20, and not quite as bad as the Jets offense, but they are 21st in red zone defense. So it is an opportunity to turn it around.
Look, ultimately the Jets have scored 18.8 points per game, and the Giants have scored 12.1. I mean, how many points are you going to predict with that kind of
What do you think the key, I don't want we should get out of here, but what do you think, I guess last kind of topic, the key to fixing these red zone woes? Is there something that the Jets could be doing that they're not? It seems like they're kind of the victim of, I don't want to say bad circumstance, but especially in that Eagles game, it's just either one sack or one penalty. It's one negative play that just puts them in that 2nd and 20, and then it's hard for this Jets offense, or really any offense, but particularly an offense that isn't uber aggressive and throwing downfield when they get way behind in the chains to make up for it. So it's like, they haven't had too many opportunities to, but it's not like they target Conklin or Lazard too often in the red zone. It seems like it's very much like when the field gets condensed, Zach Wilson is just focused on not making the mistake. And is there anything in particular, I guess, Rivka, I'll start with you, that you think the Jets should be doing more in the red zone to kind of open it up a little bit?
Well, 3 things, and one of them you just mentioned. Herman Edwards once said that he's fine with a drive as long as it ends in a kick. I got, you get the sense a lot that that's the Jets' attitude of like, just don't turn it over. We'll take the points. Don't worry about it. Stop with that attitude. I know, it's really frustrating to see Zach throw picks, but within the red zone, I'm sorry, you have to let him throw the ball. You have to let him just throw the ball. Now, the second thing is that Zach, again, we talk about him reading things faster. He needs to throw with more anticipation, meaning he very often waits to see if a guy opened before throwing the ball. Rodgers is too much the opposite, where meaning he throws with such anticipation that, at times he would even get picked or especially last year where things would happen because the guy didn't actually get open. He trusted his receivers to get open, to be open, and they weren't. There has to be some happy medium, though, where you see the coverage, you see what's happening. Don't wait that extra tick, because in the red zone, there's so little space. You need to be able to, when you see the coverage, you see where the guy's going. And there's some plays where it's not really possible. And the guy, you watch it frame by frame, you're like, oh, he was open. But then there are some plays where it's like, come on, you should be looking at Garrett Wilson over here. Like, you see where the defender is on him. Trust him to beat his guy, and you don't have to wait until you see him open to throw the ball. Just based on the spacing. So that's another one. And then, as you said, also like the lost plays, the negative plays, and especially, penalties, within the red zone, getting called for, false starts, getting called for holding. It's got to stop. They've just got to tighten that up.
Michael?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I have been looking for more of is kind of more shot plays, like not even before you get to the red zone, slightly before 30 to 20 yard line. But even once you get in like 20 to 10 yard line, I want to see more shots from that range, which, they took a couple against the Eagles. There was the Garrett Wilson one-handed catch attempt against Bradbury. And I think there was another one where he was kind of had Bradbury on top of him. So I think they did a couple, but I think there are opportunities for them to take some shots and, not have to pound the ball all the way down to the goal line, yard by yard. You can score from 10 yards, 20 yards out. It's okay. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to go all the way down to the goal line. So I would like to, especially when they're running the ball well, like I think the Denver game was the best example of this, when they had opportunities to take those shots, but they stuck with the run game kind of to a fault, and they would end up getting stuffed once the defense finally clamped down on it. So I would like to see more shot plays in that back half of the red zone, and even just outside of it.
Yeah, like you don't have to. It's kind of like what you were saying, where I think you tweeted this during the game, where you wrote, you'd like to see the Jets on 2nd and 2 take some shots as opposed to just taking the first down.
Right.
Again, when you have an opportunity where like wait, do it before things get so condensed that everything gets harder. Like again, running a whatever they tried with out and up or stutter go with Wilson when you're like in tight is there's just not a lot of space there. The guy can kind of hug kind of wall off the space, whereas if you do it from 25, 30 yards out, you have just more room to fool him.
Yeah, no, I do think this is an opportunity, like you said, Michael. The Giants 21st in red zone defense. This is a great opportunity, and really, we talked about it. The first 6 weeks of this Jets season was the gauntlet, and if they could make it through, even with Rodgers, we're talking, if they can make it through 3-3, things soften up considerably, and the Jets can sneak into the playoffs. It's not just the caliber of teams that they've been facing, but it's caliber of defense they've been facing, and the Jets these next couple of weeks get these next 3 weeks: Giants, Chargers, Raiders. A chance for Zach Wilson to play against some lesser competition, and let's see what he can do with it. And it all starts with the red zone. So excited to watch this Sunday. Rivka, I really appreciate you coming on the pod. You were great. Let our listeners know where they can read your. You have the Jets listeners listening, so keep that in mind, where they can find your work. And obviously, I assume you're going to be cheering for the Jets this weekend. Right?
Oh, I definitely will be cheering for the Jets.
All right. I just wanted to make sense.
When the Jets play the Giants, I'm like any other Jet fan.
Okay.
So I'm saying you can find my work on Jets X Factor. That's really mainly where I write. I don't think there are really too many Jets Giants fans out there, so I'm not going to plug the Giants site. That's really the main place to interact with me. And I'm going to say I'm hoping to start my own podcast soon.
Nice.
Just have to get it set up. So
it took Michael. I think the hardest part is coming up with a name. Michael and I went back and forth for probably 3 weeks trying to come up with a name. I think we did all right.
Also quickly, Ben, I did a Giants podcast earlier today. A couple guys had me on and they said about the podcast. One guy's he was so impressed with the name. He's like, that is the best name I've ever heard.
Was that Nick Filato on there Yeah. He writes for Big Blue View also.
It's a double entendre. It's got all sorts of meanings behind it. It's Michael. I give you credit.
It's not only a Jets pun, but it also is fitting with
on hot take sports culture.
Hot take sport, exactly.
Michael, that was you. You came up with
it.
I went back and looked through our text. I was like, who came up with the name? And it was you were the first one to float it out. So kudos.
Yeah.
All right, you can follow us at 2AJ Pod on Twitter. Myself, Michael _Nania, Michael _Nania. Myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. It helps out the pod a ton. Also, subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. We post all of our pods and the other Jets X pods there. I think that's it. Oh, Rivka, I want to say, I do appreciate you letting go of DeAndre Swift after week 1. He just needed a fantasy manager to believe in him to really tap his true potential, and he's just found a home here with my team. So
you're just lucky that I didn't know what on earth I was doing, because literally if I just kept the team that I drafted, I would be sitting pretty.
I know, you second guessed yourself. I know, and then
if I had just kept that team and stuck with it instead of after week 1, I had DeAndre Swift, I had Mahomes, but I'm saying it doesn't matter as much. But I had Olave, I had who else did I have? There was someone else who I got rid of who I had what was his name? The guy from Miami, the running back. How do you pronounce his last name?
Achane.
I drafted him.
Oh damn.
Yep, and I got rid of him after week 2.
Oh man, that's a lesson.
And I picked him because people had said Miami was excited about him.
Oh my god. Well, I picked I've had some bad moves too.
Nakua, so
I added before the season. I added Puka Nacua because I had seen Rams fans talk about him in training camp, and I needed another receiver. I was like, let me add this guy. Cup's going to be out, whatever. And then 15 minutes later, I was like, let me cut him and get Michael Gallup, this guy from BYU, probably nothing. And then, of course, he's great. I traded away Mostert. I had another bad move. I don't know. I've had a few of them. But, Michael, you were sitting pretty for a while at first place in the Jet X League. Now I think you've fallen a little bit. But you and I play each other. I'm 3-4. You're 4-3. It's a big matchup this weekend.
Connor getting hurt and Taylor coming back hurt you.
I will say I have
some rough breaks for sure.
I have Brees and the Jets defense and Darren Waller, so I have 3 guys.
That should be pretty good. Joe Blewett is lucky because he plays me this week.
Oh well,
so he's going to win.
You're focused on 2024.
I am. I mean, for a while that's why I was trying to tank, and now I'm just like, okay, can I get the best guy can I trade for the best guy who will be a good keeper for me for next year?
You need to win for the culture. For the sake of the culture, you need to get
I won one game. I didn't get completely obliterated. So,
yes. If you win enough games this year, 2024 will be easier for your players. Michael, I think that's it. Oh, I guess last thing. I mean, Rivka, you're going to have to excuse us for a second. Uniform talk real quickly. Michael, white on black. Is that the move this weekend?
I would like it. I think so.
All right.
White on black. I like it. Gives you some differentiation from the Giants, having some black in there, because Giants don't have any black in their uniform really. So I kind of like that.
All right,
but you can't go wrong with white on white. That's looked good in the preseason games. White on green didn't look too bad when they did it in that preseason game.
It's white on black. Wear the white on black. Come on.
I don't like the white on black.
No.
I think the white on black and the green on green are the only two that I don't like.
I like the way. I think. All right, you know what?
It's the only one they have a winning record in.
That's true.
I know, but I don't know. I don't like it. I feel like it's not symmetrical.
That is true. I think the defense, for whatever reason, I think they play better in it. I don't know why.
It's funny because when they were on that, they were winning those games last year. At least a few of them came where they were not. The defense didn't necessarily play so well.
All right.
Cleveland,
The
Pittsburgh.
thing about white and black is it's the most similar to like something a real person would wear. Like you don't see people wearing all white in real life or white shirt and green pants, but like white shirt, black pants is pretty normal. So like I think that's why I like it. I don't know. More so than
I like the throwbacks though. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Permanent
have
for
to tell us
2024.
that.
Yeah, please.
We want that permanently.
Yeah.
All right. Thank everybody for listening. Have a great week. Enjoy the game on Sunday. If they lose, it'll be a disaster on this podcast on Monday. But we'll be back on Monday, recapping the game. Everybody have a good one. Go Jets.